We're looking at a short chapter this week as we open up our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast for the week. We're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 27. It's not a very long chapter, but it's very instructive. We saw last time David has done the right thing by Saul. He could have killed him, he didn't. He leaves that to God. He will not stretch his hand out against the Lord's anointed. That's a high water mark in David's this period of David's life. But we come to chapter 27, and this is not a high water mark. It's the opposite. And we find that as David has left Saul and he's still hiding from him, that the first thing we see is that David said to himself, and then he goes on to counsel himself. Now here's the interesting thing. David does not consult the Lord in this. He consults himself. As a matter of fact, this whole time that he's going to be hanging around for a year and some months, with Achish, one of the kings of the Philistines, we have no mention of the Lord whatsoever. David is now taking care of David, I think, and he's making some bad choices. And so here is a man after God's heart, a man who's made some really good choices, and we see a tender heart in him in many ways. But we find in this chapter a dark side in David's life. It's a side of what I would call a life of deception. He comes to the Philistines, and this is the sworn enemy of Israel right now, and so not the kind of people you would think David would go to, but since he's hiding from Saul, I guess it's a safe place. He comes to one of the kings, Achish, in verse 2, and Achish is one of the kings of the Philistines. There are several, and he is going to reside there with him. Now, for whatever reason, he was able to convince Achish that he is on his side and is not a threat. So Achish likes him, and verse 6 gives him a city, probably a small village, called Ziklag, and that belonged to David, and it now belongs to apparently Judah to this day. And David stays with it for a year and 4 months. So this wasn't a weekend excursion. This is a lifestyle for David for well over a year, living among the Philistines. And what is he doing while he's living there? Well, he's raiding the other pockets of people groups that are not the Philistines, that are still in the land. In verse 8, we find him with the Geshurites, and then the Gersites, and then the Amalekites, and he's raiding these villages where these inhabitants are, and he's killing everybody there, man, woman, and child. Now, if we give any positive spin to this at all, these are people groups, nations that were originally to be eradicated by Moses, by Joshua and the people of Israel when they came into the land. These were the inhabitants of the land that were to be removed from the land, either killed or chased out, and they would be gone from the land because if they stayed, they were going to pollute the people of Israel, spiritually speaking. And so that was given to Joshua and the people, but they failed in the mission. We saw that in the book of Judges. They failed in that mission, and this has been many, many hundreds of years later from when Joshua entered the land. So the question is David have the right now to try to somehow continue that conquest after all these years? It seems very, very doubtful that he has the right to do that. And yet he does. And at the very least, it's a very brutal way of living. He is killing these people, and on top of that, he's lying about it. And so, verse 10, Achish says to him on a regular basis, "Where have you made a raid today?" And then he lied in verse 10, against the Negev of Judah and against the Negev of the Jehamites, whatever that is, and against the Negev of the Kenites. In other words, these are people that were related to Israel. And therefore he is saying, look, I am raiding the villages of the people of Israel. And so he is lying here at this point to Achish about what he's doing, and he's killing all the people so Achish can't catch on. There's certainly a lot of things going wrong here with David. And in verse 12, Achish believed him. Achish believed David, saying he surely has made himself odious among his people Israel, therefore he will become my servant forever. Achish is totally and completely deceived. And what we see in David here is David has learned to be a world-class deceiver. He has learned the art of deception. And that is going to be his downfall later on in life, I believe, that he has learned how to do this. This is not a good trait for any of us to learn. Deception, even when we try to make some kind of a good turn on this somehow, is wrong. And his deception leads to the brutal deaths of many people, and is basically, as far as I can tell, no real contact with God during this year and 4 months. And this is one of the dark hours of David's life, in my opinion.